Great. Yeah, my name's Andy Gauthier, President and Fractional CFO with Mighty Startup. Previously co-founded a SaaS company back in 2015, grew to Series B funding, and exited as the business model was shifting and pivoting. We'll just dig in here. So in the next 20 minutes, we'll talk about 3 different phases of the finance function for startups. Those phases can be broken down into planning, reporting and analytics, and strategy. And I thought it would be helpful to give a little bit more context on myself and why you might want to listen to what I have to say. So in my experience co-founding BotKeeper, we were on a mission to develop and automate the bookkeeping function for small businesses and startups. And I led the finance and operations team, again, grew to over hundreds of customers, substantial ARR, and left at the time of our Series B funding. The gist of my experience there was I oversaw a lot of small business bookkeeping and accounting and could see a lot of red flags in how small businesses were managed. And so I left to pursue my passion helping startups and small businesses and giving them that financial level of expertise that they really need to be more successful. In terms of myself, I also volunteer as a mentor with Mass Challenge, do a little bit of angel investing, and have supported over $150 million in capital raised through debt, equity, and M&A activity. Again, the three phases here that we'll be running through. Technically, any business should start with a high-level strategy, of course, but we'll talk about more operational businesses and their planning. If you're on the startup journey today, most of the examples I'll be drawing from come from companies that are in the 2 million to 5 million ARR range and trying to scale quickly to 10. And so these principles, I think, can be applied to any startup, any business, but will be most relevant to you if you're in that 2 to 5 range. Diving into planning first, there's really, to put it simply, when you start a business, you'll do some initial modeling. It should really be a quick and dirty way of evaluating the business sustainability and feasibility. And oftentimes, this is a top-down model used for fundraising purposes or just to substantiate how you'll go to market and if this is an opportunity worth pursuing. It's usually a combination of assessing the total TAM and achieving some sort of penetration over time. More commonly known is the budgeting concept. A lot of companies create a budget and rarely stick to it or report against it on a regular basis. Best tips and tricks for budgeting: make sure you're aligned at the corporate level and your goals. This involves bringing all the department leaders in, so making sure that sales and marketing are aligned, and the product team is building the product that the sales team needs to sell. Once everyone's aligned, you can finalize the budgets based on what those department heads need to achieve their goals. And typically, this process should be done 30 to 90 days before the start of your fiscal year. Oftentimes, I see startups scrambling to do this in Q1, and it's not ideal. Also, in terms of planning, forecasting is really critical. A budget is nice, and it creates a point-in-time reference point as to how you're thinking your business will operate over a course of time. But forecasting and a rolling forecast will give you the ability to make changes on the fly based on actual business performance. In terms of, I guess, next steps. So here's just a quick snapshot. Every year, we would host a founder retreat, do a deep dive planning session. Highly recommend this. Not only will it be beneficial to building team camaraderie, but also unplugging from the day-to-day chaos of growing a startup, and very, very useful in that. And so just to recap, I guess, on the last topic of planning, it's really important that you set a good plan and that everyone is aligned. Without that, everyone runs in different directions, and it's hard to achieve your goals. In terms of the next phase of the finance function, reporting and analytics is really critical. And this all starts with the foundation of bookkeeping, sort of the concept of garbage in, garbage out can be applied here. If you don't have good data going into your systems and good data integrity, the reporting is hard to rely on. So historical reporting, kind of relatively basic, but Ben does a great job of teaching and explaining some of the concepts on the importance of a SaaS chart of accounts and a SaaS P&L in order to understand critical metrics and outputs of your business. In addition to the historical reporting, there's variance analysis can be done, and typically companies will do this at the budget level and say, all right, our board approved this budget plan to achieve 5 million in ARR. We're tracking to achieve 4. That's not great. And how do we course correct? Or on the converse, we're tracking to hit 7, and do we have the right resources in place to achieve those goals and support that growth? Variance analysis also should be done on the forecast, the rolling forecast that you do. And what that does is helps you dial in the assumptions used in your forecasting and your planning. In terms of KPIs, SaaS companies have a particular set of KPIs that investors often refer to. There's been lots of discussion on this, and again, Ben does a great job of teaching these core concepts in his course. What's becoming more and more prevalent today is the importance of the Rule of 40, profitability, sustainable growth, and less on growth at all costs. And so highly recommend dialing in some of those core metrics and making sure you have a good way to get that out of your finance function. We have a template SaaS chart of accounts. One recommendation here is to really break down your revenue and your COGS by product line or by revenue type. I see a lot of companies where they will maybe have subscription revenue and professional service revenue broken out, but they don't necessarily break out the COGS, and as a result, it makes it really difficult to understand your gross margin by revenue line, channel, and when those questions come up in fundraising or just as you're trying to make decisions, it's really difficult. The other thing that some startups often fail to do is really having clarity on functional spend. There's a few different ways you can do this. Most startups that we work with use QuickBooks Online. A lot will use class tracking in order to do that, but we prefer to do detailed GL accounts in the system, and this just allows it to roll up cleaner when you're reporting month over month. You get a much better, cleaner insight into how much you're spending on each department. Here's a quick just example of a company that I've helped in their growth effort. This was a healthcare startup. They raised some early funding when they were getting going, built out the product, went to market, and they were kind of bumbling along. It wasn't until year 5 or 6 where they actually took time to get their finance function right. They had all sorts of challenges in that period with cash flow, and a lot of that stemmed from bad basic bookkeeping functions. They maybe not invoicing timely or following up with customers for payment, not thinking about just their operating cash flow. And so by investing in the finance function and personally taking the time as founders to understand it and put the right framework in place, you're much more likely to achieve the growth that you're looking for. The third pillar of the finance function is really strategy, and it's hard to think strategically when you're deep in the weeds with day-to-day accounting, or you can't trust the data that's coming out of your accounting system. And so a lot of finance teams in startups are spread thin, closing the books and doing other accounting functions, and they have very limited time to zoom out and think strategy. Really important to do that, and where the focus should be is on big picture results. So where are the big opportunities to swing for the fences and move the needle on the business? Oftentimes companies will focus on cutting costs as opposed to growing revenue and growing profits. And I think it's important to balance both. There's all sorts of other strategic initiatives that need to happen in terms of thinking big picture. So how do you reduce risk as the company's scaling? How do you improve your cash flow? Again, operating cash flow, more critical in today's environment than it has been in the last 4 or 5 years. So really focus on the big picture. Finance teams need to manage lots of different relationships. And so this is something that, if you're not doing this well, it takes time and energy. And not only do you have to manage relationships with your core team, the executive team, any finance team members, but also the board of directors, investors, key vendors, and customers, all people that you should be building trust with along the way, and it'll pay massive dividends down the road when you are introducing a new product line and trying to get testimonials from customers, et cetera. In terms of the third pillar here of strategy, it's really the fundraising M&A piece. And this is, there's all sorts of great tips and tricks on this process in general, but can't recommend enough. Start the process early. I see lots of startups that get into a crunch, and then it's a scramble to raise capital, whether through debt or equity. And it's never easier to raise money than when you don't need the money. So put a line of credit in place when you can. Maybe venture debt is an option. Maybe it's non-dilutive capital. But establish flex the muscle to secure the capital and access the capital before you need it. The other piece there is fundraising takes a lot of time, and it's basically a full-time job. So if you think it's going to take you 6 months to raise funding or 9 months, especially in today's environment, double it. It's not an easy environment to be raising venture capital in today. Be open-minded and inquisitive. When you're courting investors, remember it needs to be a good fit, and so don't jump at the big check size. Make sure there's a good fit culturally, and that they'll be able to add more to your startup than just the dollars. With that said, there's a lot of value in taking dollars from less sophisticated investors, because they might be a little bit more hands-off, have fewer opinions on how you run the business, and be a little less demanding day to day. So try to balance that as you're navigating the fundraising process. Trust but verify. I think this holds true in terms of investors often doing diligence on you. Also do your diligence on them. There are many sources of capital in today's environment, and all good for various reasons, but make sure that they're a reliable, reputable partner before signing on to work with them long term. And then last but not least is really move quickly. Time tends to kill all deals, and this is true in sales and selling products and services, but also in the fundraising process, and particularly in the M&A environment. Seen lots of deals go sideways just because they couldn't get through to a closing. So here's another quick example. Company early on, this company invested in the finance function a little bit earlier in their life cycle. They had some seasoned founders. They knew the importance of having a good financial model and running a tight process in terms of budgeting and forecasting. And as a result, they achieved growth significantly faster. Ultimately, they were able to sell at a very healthy multiple very quickly into the company life cycle. So if you're thinking about finance as a cost center, you kind of have the wrong mindset. because it really can help enable growth and ultimate success. So we talked a little bit about planning, reporting, and strategy here. I think the biggest takeaway I have for everyone is keep things simple and invest the time into this area of your business. It's really not a cost center. When it's done properly, there's massive ROI on the finance function, and the focus should be on creating value, not trimming the budget. Although it is important to spend within reason and not grow at all costs. Also, make sure everyone's aligned on the plan. So in your efforts to plan for your annual budget, make sure that it makes sense and the sales team has the resources they need to achieve the ARR growth you're looking for, and make sure that the development team has the resources they need to build the product that you need to bring to market. And then through that process of planning, you can create an accountability system. The core today is make sure the business is sustainable more than anything else, and you'll set yourself up for success. Good reference point here is Built to Sell. If you haven't read the book Built to Sell, highly recommend it. Just great examples of building a business that has real value, and it gives you flexibility to either raise capital or exit if that's what you want to do at some point. Thanks for listening, and I hope you guys enjoy the rest of the conference.
All right, thanks a lot, Andrew. A lot of good stuff there.